Hello, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for coming to our new channel. I've gotten so many requests of videos from you guys, which has been very encouraging about the grain mill, recipes, all kinds of stuff. So I was like, you know what? I just want to create a channel where it's just women, homemakers, and share whatever I feel like sharing on there. So that is going to be this page. I already have some videos that I have prepared coming up. I have an Azure haul coming up this week, making propolis tincture. So I hope you stay tuned and subscribe. It would be a huge blessing as we get this channel rolling. But I thought for the first video here, I would share my journey of becoming a homemaker. My mom was a homemaker, stay-at-home mom, and I was so blessed to have that vision of being a wife and a mom. And so from young, I remember that's all I wanted to be, was a wife and a mom. And then I went to college and I got a little bit off track in college with that vision just because I wasn't meeting anyone, and life is hard for single girls when you're not meeting someone and you kind of have to figure life out. And so I ended up getting a job after college as a graphic designer at a seminary. I was there for 18 months and I hated it. I hated going into work. I cried a lot about my work in that season. The office was in a basement. I stared at a computer screen all day and it was just really awful. So by 18 months, I ended up quitting my job. My sister and I both quit our jobs. We went out to California for a mission school, which was 2 months long, and that was life-changing. It was such an amazing experience, and it was actually from that mission school, the small group that I got put in, the leaders, they are the mutual friends who introduced me to Scott. So you never know how these little decisions that you make are God connecting dots for you. Like, had I never quit my job as a graphic designer to go out to mission school, I would have never met Scott. So after mission school, I got a job at Trader Joe's. And for me, I felt like it was my mission field. I was really excited about it. I liked the atmosphere of Trader Joe's. Everyone was so friendly and it had a good, outward appearance of what it's like to work there. Fun, exciting, and for the type of work that it did, it paid well and had insurance. So for me, there was a lot of positives for that season. About a year into working there, I was totally done. I was like, there has to be more to life than this. I cannot just continue on working here. And all the while, deep down, all I wanted was to be married, and I just was not meeting anyone. And during the season, all the while, I am working at Trader Joe's, and then I also needed more money. So I started babysitting in the mornings for a family from church, and then the seminary that I worked at allowed me to do freelance work for them, and then the university that I went to, I was doing freelance graphic design work for them as well. So I was working a ton. I still didn't feel like I was getting ahead. I had student loan debt, and life was just hard during that season. I would say that was the season that I felt depression and sadness and, God, what am I doing with my life, for the first time, and it was really hard. I believe sometimes God allows those really uncomfortable seasons to happen to get us to change our circumstances and to begin to ask, God, is this where you want me, or do you want me somewhere else? And that's what I started doing. And if you've seen any of the other videos that I've done on our Scott and Kelly page, I talk about this a lot, but I made a list of 5 options of things that I could do, and I began praying about those things, and one of those was to go to South Africa with my leaders that I had met at my mission school. And over many events, God confirmed over and over that I was supposed to go to South Africa. So that was November-ish. Come February 2nd, I was on a flight to South Africa. I was there for 3 months. My second to last week there, I ended up meeting Scott. We got married 6 months from when we met. And when he arrived in America, he wasn't allowed to work because of the immigration process. So I ended up going back to Trader Joe's and working. And there was grace in that season for me to work. I really look back and I'm like, God totally provided for us in that time. I felt fine going back to Trader Joe's, which was shocking because I couldn't wait to get out of there. But there was so much grace. God totally gave me grace for that season. And then January 2018, we decided we wanted to go back to South Africa together. Finally, all of Scott's immigration stuff got approved, so we were able to leave the country. So we went to South Africa for 3 months. And when we got back, I went back to working at Trader Joe's. Scott started working at his job, and we quickly realized we are starting a life that we never wanted. When we were dating, we talked about how we wanted to do life together, and we didn't want to be a family where the husband and wife pretty much live separate lives and hardly ever see each other because of work. We never wanted that, and yet due to financial circumstances and just life, that's kind of what ended up happening. And that was really sad. And, the grace to be at Trader Joe's wasn't quite there anymore. So by May, Scott very clearly was like, quit your job, come home. But at that time, we were also trying to get pregnant, and I had never met anyone who quit their job to be a homemaker before having children. So that was not an option for me. I was like, there's no way I can quit my job to come home without a child. Like, that is my excuse. To get pregnant is my excuse, so I can't do this. And I was afraid of what people would think of me, and so I didn't. I let fear of man rule me. There were several times that I went into work crying because I was like, well, if I was pregnant, I could just quit, and it's not happening. And I was just so upset, and it was hard being there. It just felt like the total grace to be there was gone. And then come August, one night Scott was coaching, and I was home by myself, and I just grabbed my journal and I started writing, and I was just talking to God about where I'm at. And I was immediately reminded of something that my old boss when I worked at the seminary would say to me. She told me when I was getting ready to go out to mission school and I was like trying to figure out what to do. And she said, Kelly, you are too young to play it safe. And that was huge for me in quitting my job there to end up going to mission school. And again, that line was coming through my head. You're too young to play it safe. And I was like, I am playing it safe. By me staying at Trader Joe's is me playing it safe and not trusting in God. And right then this thought came to my mind of put your 2 weeks in tomorrow. And I knew that wasn't me because that was terrifying. It was so scary to think of putting in my 2 weeks and what people would think of me. And so when Scott got home, I told him what I was feeling about quitting and putting my 2 weeks in. And he was like, yes, finally, do it. Like, this is the Lord. And so I did. The next day I went in with my little resignation letter, gave it to my boss, and immediately I was bombarded with questions of, what are you going to do? And like, why are you quitting? Did you find another job? And I didn't really know how to answer. I knew that those questions were going to come, but I didn't really know how to answer. So I just kind of made some stuff up and was like, oh, I'm going to, do art on the side and freelance design. And I'm going to help Scott with his work, which was true. That was my hope, was to be able to help Scott with his work. But I had very little confidence in what I was saying because, like I said, I'd never met anyone who quit their job to be a homemaker without having children. So I was a little bit embarrassed and didn't know what to say to people. And these thoughts came into my mind of like, you're not adding to society by not working. And guilt came in of like, I'm not contributing to my family by not bringing an income in. And all these lies that society has put on us, that a woman's most important thing she can do is go out and get a job and make money. It's like, what? Where did that come from? Like, the very thing that women can do that men can't is give birth and have children and be a nurturing, caring mother. Men do not have that ability. It's so wild that the whole idea of a woman being a keeper of the home, which is literally what Titus 2 says the older women should encourage the younger women to do, is be keepers of their home. That is just never talked about. And if it is, it's kind of like an embarrassing thing, or it's not something that's to aspire to or look up to. It's just something that someone happens to do. So for me, I had to build this new picture of what does it actually look like to be a wife? What does it look like to be a helper of my husband? And the first year, I felt like I was just, trying to build confidence. And what am I doing as a homemaker? I remember someone said to me soon after quitting my job, what do you do all day? Do you sit and watch Netflix? And I was so offended by it because one, we didn't have a TV. Two, we didn't have any streaming thing. And basically the only thing I watched was Justin Rhodes and Doug and Stacy on YouTube, and that was because I had no idea about gardening or homesteading, and that was the direction that we were wanting to go in. But I struggled with that question when people would ask me all the time, what do you do all day? And so the one day I was like, God, what do I say when people ask me what am I doing all day? And this idea came into my mind of ask them, what would they do if they had time, if they didn't have to go into their 9 to 5? And I realized that most people don't know what they would do if they had the time to do what they wanted to do. And that's part of the problem, is that they need to go into work for someone else to tell them what to do because they don't have a vision for their life. Whereas I did have a vision. I wanted to be a helper to my husband and a keeper of my home and learn the value that I can bring from being in the home. And there was so much value. It didn't take hardly any amount of time for us to realize the importance of my role in our home. One, financially, we ended up saving more money from me quitting my job than the money that I was making working, because and this spreads out over many different things, but one being we ate out quite a bit when I was working because I was exhausted. I would come home from work and not feel like cooking. So we went to the Whole Foods hot bar a lot when I was working, and that adds up. That's expensive. We would get pizza every once in a while, and because I was working at Trader Joe's, I was buying a lot of things from Trader Joe's. Granted, I was getting a 10% discount, but still, I ended up getting more pre-made type of foods because I didn't have the time to be cooking meals. We ended up eating way healthier too because I started learning how to cook meals from scratch, how to cook from ingredients rather than buying a bunch of different pre-made, pre-packaged things, or even like the salad kits from Trader Joe's. I bought those a lot, and I learned how to start with ingredients to make things, and that is so much more healthy than all of the skip that step and just get the pre-made stuff. And it was fun. It was exciting for me to learn how to cook. I mean, even at that time we were doing almond milk and oat milk and cashew milk, and so instead of me buying them, which those things are expensive if you get a good quality brand, and even then there's fillers and all kinds of other junk in it, I ended up learning how to make those things myself at home. I learned how to cook good meals for us. Scott was eating better. He was thrilled that I was cooking. We ended up getting a lot of good quality grass-fed meat, and I started learning how to actually cook meat. I'd never done that before. I had only ever cooked chicken or bacon or ground beef, but getting all of these different cuts of meat was so exciting because now I had to figure out what to do with them, and looking up YouTube videos of how to cook different recipes, and I ended up saving way more money on groceries. And then I didn't realize how much of my time I spent going shopping to soothe my hate for work. So the Trader Joe's I worked at was across the street from a Michael's and a TJ Maxx, and on my lunch breaks or even after or before work, I would go to Michael's and TJ Maxx and buy things. Retail therapy. Got some art stuff that I never had time to make because by the time I got home I was exhausted. But that was another thing we quickly saw, is that this retail therapy that I felt I needed to do quickly went away because I was enjoying my life at home. I had purpose and vision and excitement, and I didn't need shopping to soothe this dread that I was feeling in life. I also learned how to track our finances. Up to this point, we had never tracked how much money we were bringing in or where our money was going. And we had started listening to Dave Ramsey, which helped us pay off our debt. The ironic part is during this season, we paid off all of my student loan debt, and we realized the importance of keeping track of where our money is coming in and going. And before this, it just wasn't a priority to us. We were just, surviving. And now it was exciting for me to treat money as if it's a game, to know where our money is going and how I'm spending our money. And so Scott created a spreadsheet, which basically you just have different categories. And we actually have made a whole video on this. I'll link it below. It's on managing the home economy. We share more about the spreadsheet that we use. It's so weird saying a spreadsheet. It's a Google Docs sheet, and it's so easy. It's not complicated. We created a template so where you can just click on the link and then save it and plug in the numbers for your own. And we just offer that for free because it's been a blessing for us. So if you'd like that, I will also link that below. But tracking our money was very helpful because then we could at least see what in the world is going on with our finances, which up to this point in our life, we had never done before. And then there's this level of creativity in the home to where I started learning how to make laundry detergent. And I'd never done that before. I'd never even thought about doing that before. But it was like once I got this idea of, wow, my job now is stewarding and running our home economy. I am the CEO of our home. How can I make our home function, work the best way possible? And how can we be the healthiest we can be? How can I make my home peaceful, a nice place to come home to, for Scott to come home to? Husbands have the weight of the world on them with providing. And so what an honor it is to be a wife who creates a sanctuary of a home for her husband to come home to. So that was the goal for me, is how can I create our home to be a pleasant place, an enjoyable place, so when Scott comes home, he can rest. And with the laundry detergent thing that I talked about of learning how to make my own laundry detergent, that also ties into money because now I get my laundry soap bar from Calico and Twine. Caitlin and her mom make these amazing soap bars, and you can make 10 gallons worth with her soap bar, and it lasts a long time and ends up being like cents per laundry load, and it works beautifully. It is so amazing. So I highly recommend you check out her soap bar if you've never made your own laundry soap before. And then now I had time to actually garden. So we started our garden when I was still working at Trader Joe's, and I remember being outside and planting things and getting my hands dirty and then having to work a 2 to 10 shift. And I was so sad to have to leave my home to go into work that it was surreal to me after I quit. And the next garden season, that's what I get to do. I get to create a garden and grow our own food and it was just so exciting to me because I was like, there's so much value to this. There's so much value in growing your own food and knowing how to grow your own food and in knowing how to can and store your food for winter. When you're working a job, a 9 to 5 or 40 hours a week, it is so hard to have the energy to not only do all of these things, but to have the time to look up how to do these things. Gardening takes a lot of learning. Making things at home from scratch takes time to look up recipes or ingredients or how to do these things. And when you're working outside of the home for that much time, it's really hard to do those things, and convenience becomes very important to you because you don't have time, you don't have energy, so you end up prioritizing convenience. So, instead of making your own laundry detergent, you buy it. Instead of making food at home, you go to the Whole Foods hot bar. So really, there is such an abundance of work to be done in the home that there is no end. Whatever you are excited or passionate about, you can learn how to do that thing. In 2020, I became excited about learning about herbs and herbalism. So I ended up buying Rosemary Gladstar's course, and I did the online 3-year access thing, and I also bought the binders. So I did the double set, and that got me started with learning all about tinctures, salves, oils, fire cider, and learning about building a home apothecary and making my own capsules with a capsule machine. All those things are very fun, but they do take time and energy to know how to do. So I was able to start creating immune boosters for us, tea blends, and all of that was so much fun. So the home is a very productive place to be. The whole what do you do all day is actually just a lack of vision for how much there is to be done in the home. Home is the forward operating base of heaven. And I'm just talking about being a wife, I haven't had experience with being a mother, but that adds in a whole another layer of things of what a blessing it is to be home with your children. And so yes, there is lots of productive work to be done. But there's another side of this too that I had to get used to, because after I quit my job and I was at home, and I felt this need to constantly tell Scott everything that I did for the day and update him on all the stuff that I did. And I quickly realized it was an insecurity in me. I was so insecure that I didn't want him to regret me quitting my job or think I was wasting time. So I needed to tell him everything that I did. And then one day he was like, that's like, I'm excited that you're excited about all the things you did, but I would also be okay if you just turned on worship and worshiped the Lord all day, or if you read a book. And it was like this weight came off of me. I didn't realize how much I also felt I needed to be busy to justify me being at home. And so there is an aspect of the blessing of being at home is that you get to be focused on hosting the presence of God. You get to play worship music. You get to take time to read the Bible when you get a second. You don't have some other boss dictating what you're doing with your time. You are your boss. You are the one that is seeing, okay, this is my day. These are my hopes. These are my plans. And also, I'm going to take time to get in the Word. I'm going to take time to worship. I'm going to take time to read. I don't know how many times once it starts getting warm out, my favorite thing to do is just go sit outside with a book and a cup of tea and take in the sunshine. And every time I think about the years of me working a job during the day in the middle of the week and thinking, this wasn't possible. This was never possible when I worked outside of the home, was to go and just read a book or to just play worship music and have fun singing in my home without caring what anyone thinks of me. And what a blessing it is. And I want to always be conscious of that it is such a blessing to be able to be home and to be a homemaker. And it is a blessing to be a productive wife and steward the home well. But it's also important to be a restful and peaceful wife in the process of that. And so with all of that being said, if you are someone who is not yet married and you are having to work much like I was, it's really important that whoever you end up dating in the process of deciding who to marry, that you talk to them about your desire to be a wife and a mom, and make sure that they are on the same page as you, and that he would be happy for you to quit your job and be a stay-at-home mom. And it's really interesting because looking back and having believed the only legit reason to quit your job was to get pregnant, but how many women do you see working all the way up until they're 8 months, quit their job a few weeks before having a baby, they come home, and all of a sudden they are thrown into being a new mom and understanding the value of being a homemaker. And that's why I think so many women do have these moments of like crisis of what am I doing? Because there was never a time taken to see the value of them being at home, and even more so the value of them being at home with their child. So I think it's a huge blessing to be newly married, and instead of going into your job, what if the goal was for you to get married and then to be a wife? One of our friends we've met recently, that's what they did. And I was like, how cool. Like, you got married and you immediately got to be a homemaker from being married. That is such a blessing. It's such a blessing to your husband. And like, how many skills can you learn now before you get pregnant? And that way you already have systems going. You already know how to have a sourdough starter and how to make bread. You're not learning all of these new things all at once, but you're slowly adding more skills and tools to your tool belt. And so it's not totally overwhelming when you have a child because you already have things that you're already doing. And then there's those of you also who I'm sure are married and longing to be a homemaker. And maybe your husband isn't on the same page as you and doesn't see the value of you quitting your job to be at home. I would encourage you to remain cheerful in this season, even when it's hard, even when you hate having to get up and go to work? How can you remain cheerful and helpful to your husband and honor him even in this season? All the while, you can still be praying for him. Pray that God would soften his heart and see the value of you being at home. But nagging and making him feel bad or guilty is never a good way to try to get your way. So I would definitely encourage you to be praying that God sees you in secret, He will reward you openly, and that you remain cheerful even in this season, and just see what God does and how He vindicates you. So I hope that this video has been an encouragement for you, and that if you are already a homemaker, that you see that there is so much value to you being in the home, and that you are being obedient to Scripture, that it literally says older women teach the younger women to be keepers of the home. So I bless you, I bless your household, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.